Chapter 27, Mental Healing Methods. And now to the actual work of mental healing by mentative currents. In this work, I must again repeat my injunctions given in the preceding chapter regarding the holding of the proper mental image in the mind of the healer. In the degree that the proper mental image is held will be the degree of success in the treatment. Visualization is the key note of this form of mental healing, and the healer should devote himself earnestly to acquiring the art of visualization. You must be able to see the patient as healed and the organs, parts, and cells as functioning normally and properly. Cast aside all negative thought and doubts, and throw yourself earnestly into the work before you. You will find that as the ability to visualize is acquired, there will come to you a feeling of strength and power, and a sense of certainty about your work. The process of transmitting the mentative currents is not especially difficult or strenuous. In fact, this part of the work seems almost automatic. All that you will have to do is to concentrate your full attention upon the mental image that you have visualized and earnestly desire that the picture materializes, and do not bother at all about the currents, for the latter will begin to flow freely without any voluntary effort on your part. Occasionally, you may throw a little willpower into the work in order to stimulate the healing process, but ordinarily the unconscious use of the desire force will accomplish the result. It is not necessary to use the strenuous effort that so many mental healers employ in giving treatments. This is all waste energy and tires one out without any corresponding advantage to the patient. The clear-cut mental image produced by the practice of visualization performs the work for you, as I have said, almost automatically. The more realistic your picture is made to appear to you, the greater the force sent forth, and the greater the degree of success will you have in your healing. Some excellent healers have found that they gained additional force if they would add to their mental picture or image the picture of the mentative currents actually leaving their minds and traveling toward the patient, and then enveloping and surrounding the latter. One very good healer has told me that she always can see mentally the patient being bathed in a perfect stream of her mind power. I feel that this lady is right, and that by adding this feature to the mental image, very good results may be obtained. The student of these lessons will find this last image easy to produce if he will remember what we have said about thought forms. I do not advise too long treatments, for I believe that the best results are obtained in a treatment extending over, say, no more than 15 minutes. You should then leave the patient with a few earnest words of encouragement and hope, bidding him aid in your work by keeping the proper mental image of health before him, and especially avoiding all fear and worry. The above process of giving a mental treatment may seem very simple to those who have not practiced it, but you will find that it contains the real essence of the healing process without the fringe and trimming. And more than that, you will find it wonderfully efficacious. It will do the work. You will never begin to even faintly realize the virtue of such treatment until you begin to practice it. You will then find yourself so filled with such a sense of power, strength, and healing force that you will seem like another person, and your patient will likewise feel an immediate benefit. I might write page after page giving you directions about the treatment, but after I was through, it could all be boiled down into the plain, simple directions already given you. I have given you the basis of the practical treatment. You may add the trimmings yourself if you feel that you need them. This same basis you will find to underlie all of the treatments of the various sects and cults. After you have trimmed off the fancy additions, high-sounding words, and metaphysical terms, I have studied all these forms of treatment and know just what I am talking about when I say this to you. And now for the absent treatments along the lines of general treatment. There is practically no difference in the methods. The principal additional process is that of the healer endeavoring to form a mental image of the patient as if he were right before him in person. If you have ever seen the patient, you may easily reproduce his mental image. But if you have not seen him personally, you can form a mental image of a man or a woman without filling in the detail of the personal appearance. And the result will be similar. You will find the following methods will help you in the treatment. Sit down in your chair after drawing up another chair right before you, but about 2 or 3 feet distance. Then picture your patient as sitting in this other chair and use your imagination to the fullest in this respect. Many practitioners of successful mental healing actually feel that the patient is sitting before them in this form of treatment. Then, with your patient sitting before you as a mental image, talk to him just as if you were present in person, using the same words, tones, and manner. Throw yourself earnestly into the idea of a personal treatment and endeavor to forget that miles are between you. By so doing, you will be able to start the mentative currents flowing freely in their direction, and he will be affected by them and will obtain the best results. I have been told frequently by persons who have taken this form of healing from some of the world's best mental healers that they could almost see the healer before them. They could certainly feel his presence very distinctly. This talk to the distant patient should consist of the same calming, quieting, soothing suggestions at first, followed by the positive, stimulating, forceful suggestions given afterward. Follow the precise instructions given for use in personal treatments, and you cannot go astray. There is no difference in reality between personal treatments and absent treatments. If you will remember this and act upon it, you will have the key to the matter. And then, after the suggestive talks, you should then give the same silent mentative treatment as indicated in my instructions regarding personal treatments. You should form the same kind of mental image and proceed just the same in every particular. Even bid them goodbye as you would in a personal treatment. If you have set a time for the absent treatment, Your patient should place himself in a comfortable, relaxed position, but this is not necessary. It is not necessary for the patient to even know the hour of treatment. All that he needs to do is to open his mind receptively to the treatment that you are to give him sometime during the day. That is, he should express his mental willingness and thus take off the resistance of his will, which otherwise would have to be overcome. The healer who wishes to give absent treatments should study carefully the portions of this work relating to the telementative induction, the currents, thought forms, etc. Remember, please, that all the work of mental healing is done along the lines of mentative induction, just as is the work of all forms of mentative influences. There is but one great law underlying all of these forms of manifestation, and if you understand the fundamental principle, you will be able to reproduce any or all of the manifestations of it. The instruction regarding mental healing is not confined to this chapter alone. It must be gained from a study of all these chapters for the reasons just stated. Strive always to acquire a clear knowledge of the underlying principles, and you need not worry about the details of operation or manifestation. And now, just a word about self-healing. Along these lines, there is no difference between self-healing and the healing of others. Here is a good method, simple and effective. All that is necessary for you to do is to imagine yourself as a patient coming to yourself for treatment. Suppose your name is John Smith, and you wish to treat yourself along the lines of the general treatment. All you have to do is to let the central mind part of you, or the I, proceed to treat the body of John Smith. Talk to John Smith just as if he were an entirely separate entity. Tell him what he should do, and what he should know, and what you expect to do for him. Give him the same suggestions that you would give another patient. Talk up to him and tell him just what you mean to do for him and what he has got to do himself. Then give him the silent treatment, just as you would another patient. Even give him the parting words, just as you would a patient. In short, treat him first, last, and at all times as you would another patient. You will be surprised to note how effective this plan is. This method is original with myself, so far as I know. There is a good, strong psychological and occult reason for this plan of self-treatment, which is not necessary to go into here. The principal thing is that it will do the work. Try it. The ordinary method of self-treatment is to say, I am well, and so on, giving the suggestions in the first person. I consider that my own plan gives better results, but you may try both and decide for yourself. And now for the local treatment method of mental healing. These are very simple also, so simple that I fear some of you will undervalue them. But do not deceive yourselves, good friends. The simplicity represents years of hard work along experimental lines and is really the boiling down of many methods far more complicated and technical. It is the essence of the thing. Again, I wish that I could have obtained this information as easily as you are doing, but I couldn't. for I had to work it out for myself in connection with other experimenters and investigators. The underlying theory of this local treatment in mental healing is 1. That there is mind in every cell, cell group, organ, and part of the body, and 2. That the mentative energy in such a mind is negative to that in the central mind of the individual, and consequently yields to its positivity when properly applied. That is the whole story in a nutshell. Now see if you can grasp its importance. The above principles of the local treatment is really also employed in the general treatment, because the central mind of the patient is stirred into induced activity and positivity by the suggestions or mentative currents of the healer, or both. The central mind of the patient, so stirred up by induction, then acts upon the mind in the cells, organs, etc., unconsciously, and the cure results. Do you see just what I meant? Well, then in the local treatment, instead of going about it in this way, the healer brings his mentative energy to bear right directly upon the mind in cells and organs themselves. So you see, the process is really the same at the last. That is, it is the application of the positive central mind upon the negative mind of the cells, organs, and parts. Now then, how may one treat the cells and organs of another person in this way? The process is very simple. When you once learn it, all that is necessary is for you to treat the organ or part just as you did the patient, in several forms of general treatment as stated a while ago. You must learn to talk to the organ or part affected, and to give it suggestions and mental treatment just as you did your personal patient. In short, the nearer you can come to considering and treating the cells or organs as if they actually were personalities or entities, the better will be your success in this form of treatment. This is no mere trick or bit of superstition. It is based upon good psychological principle, and thus has its reason in well-defined occult laws. There is mind in the organ and cell, and you are reaching out to it. The way to reach the mind in the cell, cell groups, ganglia, organs, nerves, parts, etc., of the body is to address yourself directly to it, just as you would to a person. You must think of the mind in the affected parts as a person who is misbehaving. You must remonstrate with, argue with, coax, order, or drive the person residing in the organ just as you would different individuals. Sometimes coaxing is much better than driving, and sometimes the forceful method is necessary, as we shall see. You may either talk aloud to the mind in the organ, or else, and this is a better way in treating others, you may do your talking mentally. Tell it just what you expect of it, just what you intend it shall do, just what is right for it to do, and it will obey. I know a lady who is an excellent healer along these lines, and who obtained the principles of this particular form of healing from myself. She tells me that she followed my plan as above stated, with the exception that to her the organs, nerves, and parts always seem like disobedient children. who must be managed one way or the other. And so she proceeds just as she did when she was a successful school teacher. And I am inclined to think that she is right, and has made an improvement on my original idea, for these cell minds or organ minds closely resemble the minds of undeveloped children, and are often unreasonably stubborn, although if they are reached the right way by a firm though kindly tone, in most cases they will obey orders and mend their ways. It is well to use the hands at the beginning of this form of treatment in the direction of tapping or patting the part of the body directly over the organ. This seems to have the effect of awakening the attention of the organ mind so that it becomes more receptive. It is akin to tapping the shoulder of a man on the street to whom you wish to speak. In such cases, it is well to send the mental command, "Hey, listen to me." The hands of the healer may also be passed over the body as the mental commands are given, and they serve to give an additional and strengthened suggestion when properly used. A plain, simple way of giving this treatment is to awaken the attention of the mind in the organ or part, as above stated, and then proceed to mentally lecture it, calling it by name, as for instance, here stomach, or now liver, etc. Do not smile at this advice. Just try it on yourself and you will stop smiling. Then go on and tell the organ mind just what you would tell it if it were an actual personality. A childish mind, for instance. You will soon find how quick the organ mind is to awaken to your words and to act upon your suggestions or orders. Follow the laws of suggestion in giving these treatments to the organ mind. That is, remember the suggestive phases of repetition, authoritative demands or command, etc. Do not be afraid, but start in to give the organ mind a piece of your mind, and it will obey you. Dr. Paul Edwards, one of the world's most famous mental healers, whom I met quite often a number of years ago when he was living in Chicago, informed me that the result of his practice has taught him that there is a great difference in the intelligence of the mind in the several organs. For instance, he believed that the heart was very intelligent and quite amenable to mild, gentle coaxing, suggestions and advice or orders, while on the other hand, the liver was a most mulish, stubborn, obstinate organ mind, which had to be driven along by the sharpest and most positive suggestion. I have since investigated along this line, and I am now fully convinced of the correctness of Dr. Edwards' theory in this respect. I found the heart to be very gentle and obedient, as he said, and I have moreover found it needed but the slightest word to attract its attention. I have found the liver to be brutish, stubborn and obstinate, and needing the most forceful, insistent methods, something like driving a stubborn donkey along the road. I've also found the liver to be lazy and sleepy, and needing much effort to rouse it into a receptive condition. The stomach I found quite intelligent, particularly if it has not been brutalized by stuffing, and it will readily respond to the treatment. A peculiar thing about the stomach is that it seems to like jollying or flattery. Tell it how good a stomach it is, and how well it can do its work, and how much you trust it to run things right for you, and lo, it proceeds to make good and justify your praise and commendation. The nerves respond readily to this form of treatment along gentle coaxing lines. The circulation of the blood may be increased to certain parts or restrained in this way. In this way, the blood can be swept along the body, creating a pleasant glow, or it may be drawn away from an aching head or a feverish brow. The bowels respond readily to a firm, kind treatment in which they are to be told, to move regularly, it being well to name a certain time at which you expect them to establish a regular habit, in which case be sure to keep your appointment with them and give them a chance. The organs peculiar to women will respond quite readily to this form of treatment. Regular menstruations has often been established by treating the proper parts in this way a month ahead and keeping it up every day until the regular period. In this case, it is also well to fix a date. Suggestions of firm, now be firm and strong, have relieved many cases of wound weakness. Profuse menstruation has yielded to commands of slow, now, easy, easy, not so free a flow. There are no fixed forms of treatments along these lines. You must acquire the knack by practice. The proper words will suggest themselves to you. The thing to do is to know what you want done, and then command the organ mind to do that thing, using the same words that you would use in talking to a real person, in the place of the organ. You will soon acquire the art by a little practice. Those who have treated a large number of persons in this way have told me that the mind in the organs and parts seem to instinctively recognize the healer's power over them, just as a horse or dog will recognize men who are accustomed to managing animals of their kind. So will these organ minds instinctively recognize their master in one who has studied this art of mental healing along these lines. Remember always that you are mind talking to mind, not to dead matter. There is mind in every cell, nerve, organ, and part of the body, and in the body as a whole. And this mind will listen to your central mind and obey it, because your central mind is positive to it. The organ is negative to you. Carry this idea always with you in giving these treatments, and endeavor to visualize the mind in the organs, etc., as clearly as may be, for by so doing you get them in better rapport with you, and can handle them to better advantage. And also remember that the virtue lies not in the mere sound of the words that happen to reach the organ or cells. They do not understand words but they do understand the meaning behind the words. They recognize the mental state of which the word is the outward symbol. But without words, it is very hard for you to think or clearly express the feeling, and so by all means use the words just as if the organ minds understood their actual meaning. For by so doing you can drive in the meaning of the word and induce the mental state conditions necessary to work the cure. While this local treatment is adapted especially to personal healing, still it may be also used to great advantage in absent healing by combining it with the regular general form of absent healing. That is, after giving the general absent treatment, proceed to place yourself en rapport with the organ mind in the patient, and then talk to it just as if you would talk to the patient if they were actually present. Visualization will enable you to do this effectively. I've heard of some wonderful cures having been effected by the use of this form of local treatment in absent healing, in connection with the general treatment. And in case of self-healing, this local treatment acts with wonderful force. One can, of course, talk up to his own cells and organs, just as he can to those of another, and with equal effect, if he goes about it the right way. This opens up a wonderful field for self-healing. The methods and practice of local treatment in this self-healing are precisely similar to those used in treating others. I am personally acquainted with a lady who has learned to make her body obey her perfectly. If the body looks tired or droopy or lacks freshness and beauty, she just talks up to it and tells it how much she thinks of it and how much she appreciates all that it is doing for her, etc., and at the same time encourages it to manifest activity and interest. The result is that the next morning after the treatment she will find that all of her suggestions have been accepted and acted upon by the body, and that the latter looks fresh, active and beautiful, manifesting all the appearance of youth and perfect health. I have heard of women managing to retain their youthful appearance in a similar manner. I have known men to cox up their bodies when under strain of unusual work, with the best of results. In fact, I believe that in this form of treatment of one's own body, there are possibilities as yet undreamt of by the race. Perhaps hints may start some investigator to explore the field to the limit. I have not found time to carry my investigation along these lines quite as far as I would have liked. There is a great unexplored field here. Here is a chance for some fine work for the students of this book. And now I seem to have reached the end of this chapter. Remember, please, that within its pages I have condensed information sufficient to have filled a good-sized volume or two. Read it carefully and do not let the simplicity of my methods lead you to ignore the wonderful possibilities open to those who will practice them. I have not cared to dress up my treatments and methods in fancy garb for the purpose of bewildering the eye and creating an impression upon the foolish and childish minds of those who run after these things. I do not want a following of this sort. I want, rather, the earnest, sympathetic cooperation of my students who appreciate the virtue in these apparently simple methods. As I have said before, these simple methods and forms of treatment represent the work and experience of myself and others extending over a number of years. They are the boiling down of many systems and the results of my own experiments. They embody the simplest, plainest, and yet the most effective methods known to the world of mental healing today. Take my word for this. I base this statement upon 8 active years of earnest, patient, careful investigation, experiment and study along these lines under circumstances with which few are fortunate enough to be favored. I say these things not in the spirit of boasting or booming my own wares, but merely that you may understand just what is behind under these simple forms, methods and treatments. You will notice, I hope, that in order to practice these methods of mental healing, You are not required to join anything, nor asked to connect yourself with any new religion or semi-religion. You may adhere to your favorite beliefs and still make as many cures as the best of those who believe and claim that the healing is done because of some fantastic theory, dogma, or belief. There is no more sense in building up a religion around mental healing than there is in building one up around homeopathy, allopathy, or osteopathy, or hydropathy. There is but one healing power of the mind, and that is free and open to all. It is the gift of the infinite to its finite reflections. It is a natural force working under certain laws and free to all. Take it and use it toward the healing of the nations, beginning with yourself. And that brings us close to chapter 27. Mind Power, Chapter 28. Mental Architecture. Architecture means the art or science of building or construction, and mental architecture means the art or science of mind building. By mind building, I of course mean brain building, for as I've told you in previous chapter, the brain is the machinery of the personal manifestation of mind, or the converter or transformer of mind power. But as the word mind is generally used as synonymous with brain, in case of individuals, I shall speak of mind building in this lesson, although I always mean brain building when I so speak. The differing manifestations of mind in the various persons with whom we come in contact is at once recognized as depending upon the character, quality, degree, and grade of their brain material. The brain is composed of a peculiar substance called plasm, or elementary living matter. The word plasm is derived from the Greek word meaning a mold or matrix, and its use in connection with brain substance is peculiarly appropriate. For it is in the cells of the brain that mental states are cast or molded, as it were. The brain is composed of an enormous number of tiny cells, which are the actual elements in the production and manifestation of thought or mentation. These brain cells are estimated to be about 500 million to 2 billion, according to the mental activity of the person. There is always a great number of reserve brain cells remaining unused in every brain, the estimate being made that even in the case of a wisest man or most active thinker, there is always several millions of unused brain cells held as a reserve. And the most advanced science also informs us that the brain grows additional cells to meet any demand upon it. And brain building is the development and growth of brain cells in any special region of the brain. For, as you probably know, the brain contains many regions, each region being the seat of some particular function, quality, faculty, or mental activity. By developing the brain cells in any special region, the quality, activity, or faculty, which has that region for its seat, is necessarily greatly increased and rendered more effective and powerful. The investigators along the lines of phrenology have long since recognized the fact that brain centers or regions could be developed by proper exercises, etc., and the textbooks on that science gives us many interesting facts regarding the same. These cases show us that not only is an individual able to develop and cultivate certain qualities of the mind on the one hand, or retrain them on the other, but that also the very outward shape and size of the skull manifests a corresponding change, for the bony structures accommodate itself very gradually to the pressure of the increasing number of cells in some particular center or region of the brain. It is a fully demonstrated scientific fact that a man may make himself over mentally if he will but devote the same degree of attention, patience, and work to the subject that he would in the case of a desired development of some part of the physical body, some muscle, for instance. And the process are almost identical in the case of muscle and brain center. Use, exercise, and practice along the lines pointed out by those who have investigated and experimented along the particular line. Professor Elmer Gates of Washington, D.C., one of the most remarkable men of this age, has given to the world an account of some remarkable experiments along the line of brain growing. The experiments have been tried upon various animals. He tells us that his early experiments along this line were in the direction of training dogs to develop some one particular sense, that of seeing or hearing particularly. He would specially train a certain number of animals according to his methods, and at the same time would keep a like number of the same animals of the same age, etc., without any extraordinary use of the particular faculty in question, and still a similar number without the opportunity of using the faculty at all. At the end of a certain time he would kill some of the animals belonging to each class, and upon examining the brains of each he made the discovery that the number of brain cells in the regions of their brains in which the sense or faculty was manifested showed a startling difference depending upon the degree of use and exercise of that particular faculty. Especially trained animals showed a much greater number of brain cells than had ever been found in animals of the same breed and age. Professor Gates continued these experiments over a number of years and obtained some remarkable results. He especially trained the faculties of some of his dogs so that they were able to distinguish between 7 shades of red and a like number of green shades. I have not the time here to speak at length of the wonderful results of Professor Gates' experiments, but he has firmly established the scientific fact that brains may be grown at will if the person will apply himself to the subject with sufficient zeal and ardor. I have conducted a number of interesting experiments, not with dogs though, or through vivisection, which have proven conclusively to my mind that the entire natures, dispositions, characters, and faculties of people may be entirely changed by intelligent psychological methods along the lines of suggestions or autosuggestion, accompanied with certain other methods to be mentioned in this lesson. The great school of New Thought people of the various sects, cults, and associations have been doing some excellent work along these lines during the past 10 years or more. Their system or affirmations and denials really developed or retrained their brain centers, and desirable qualities were increased and developed, and undesirable ones were restrained. But the mere use of affirmations, autosuggestions, or even strong positive suggestions given by another forms only 1/3 of the work necessary in order to produce the best results. It is all very well to assert, I am brave, I am industrious, I am active, etc., etc. But if the work stops there, it remains only 1/3 done. It is true that these affirmations or autosuggestions undoubtedly do stimulate and develop mental faculties and brain centers and play an important part in character building. But in order that they be used to the best advantage, there must be visualization, and there should be a certain physical acting out of the mental suggestions or affirmation. There must be seeing and doing as well as saying. You will remember that I said in my lesson on mental suggestion regarding the fact that mental states take form in physical action, and it's twin truth that physical action produces mental states. It is a case of action and reaction in both instances. For instance, if you will start in to feel angry and keep it up a little while, even though the emotion is assumed for the experiment, you will find that your brows will form into a frown, and your hands will clench, and your jaws will fasten into a savage bite. You know this to be true, of course, but then on the other hand, if you will assume the above-mentioned physical characteristics accompanying anger, and will keep them up earnestly for a short time, you will find yourself actually feeling angry, and the same thing is true of the feelings and actions of pleasure. Think intently of some pleasant thing, and you will find your face breaking into an expression of pleasure. You will smile, your eyes will twinkle, and you will manifest all the outward characteristics of pleasure. And on the other hand, if you will throw yourself into the part and will smile and manifest all the outward signs of pleasure, you will find yourself beginning to feel bright, cheerful, and happy in a short time. I have seen a sign bearing the simple word "smile" in big letters, causing people to change their mental states in a few moments. They would take the suggestion, and being amused at the sign, they would begin to smile. Then the smile's physical action would react upon their minds, and they would begin to feel good, and so on. I defy anyone to manifest the physical actions of any particular emotion or feeling earnestly and actively for a short time without the corresponding mental state actually manifesting itself. Go into a business house manifesting the outward signs of good cheer, confidence and self-reliance, etc., and you will not only impress others by suggestion, but you will also impress yourself, and you will begin to actually feel the thing that you have been acting out. Go into the same place, manifesting the outward appearance of failure, lack of confidence, fear, etc., and not only will your suggestions be taken up by others, but you will sink deeper and deeper into the mental state you are acting out. I have known people to acquire a masterful, confident, reliant character by a systematic and persistent acting out of the part, their second nature, so acquired, growing stronger than their original nature. The exercise of the faculty in this way developed the brain cells into the proper area, and the people were indeed made over. I know men who, when feeling blue or discouraged, will always force a smile to their faces and in a short time they will regain their accustomed or desired cheerful state. I have known at least of one man to rouse feelings of stern determination by similar methods. This man was in a position in which there would frequently arise the necessity for the manifestation of the most determined sternness and an almost angry display of will. The man in question was by nature a good-natured, easy-going, kindly person, and he found it almost impossible to manifest the desired qualities upon the occasions mentioned. But one day he was roused to a state of intense, determined sternness by a most annoying exhibition of careless action in the office, which, although soon settled, left him with the physical reflex of the mental state just experienced. Before this physical condition had passed away, there arose unexpectedly a case of genuine necessity for the exhibition of the stern, determined action mentioned in the first place. Meeting the man to whom this attitude must be manifested, our man found that, much to his surprise, he displayed a wonderful degree of the desired trait, and gave the other man a talking to that made his hair stand on end and brought the desired result instantly. No one was more surprised at this occurrence than our man, and after it was all over he tried to figure it out, and did. He came to the conclusion that when he was manifesting the physical conditions of the mental state, it required but one trifling effort to induce the state itself. In fact, the state came almost automatically. He had discovered by accident a well-established psychological law, and he made use of it ever after. Thereafter, whenever he had to work himself into a state, as he called it, he would walk about his office a few moments before he would see the other man, and during his walk he would bite hard and protrude his jaw, he would frown and clench his fists, and make his eyes glare, etc., etc., and before long he would feel himself in the proper mood to see the other man, and give him the necessary laying out. The plan worked like a charm. I almost dislike to tell you the sequel, though. Our good-natured easy man so developed these opposite qualities by his practice that in a few years he was known as a man to be dreaded by those who had occasion to receive treatment at his hands. And his whole nature seemed to have changed, and even his best friends would then hesitate to call him easy or good-natured. He made himself over, that's all, and from this story you may build up a whole process of character building if you have sufficient imagination and ingenuity, for the principle is the same in all cases. Character is plastic and may be molded at will by intelligent methods, but it takes more than holding the thought to do it. One must learn to act out the part desired until it becomes second nature. I wonder how many of you will realize what a wonderful field is here opened out for you if you will follow the idea taught by the past few pages. How many of you will realize that I have herein given you the secret of making yourselves over? I wish that I could fairly pound into you this truth when I think of what many of you are, and then of what you might be if you would realize the inner truth and importance of what I have just told you. Well then, I feel like printing the tale in big, black-faced type and capital letters so that I could make you read it. I think that the facts and principles above stated are self-evident and need little or no backing up by authorities. But I think I will give you a quotation or two to help fasten the idea in your minds. Professor Halleck says, by restraining the expression of an emotion, we can frequently throttle it. By inducing an expression, we can often cause its allied emotion. I wish that every one of you would commit the above words to memory. They are golden. By expression, Professor Halleck, of course, means the physical manifestation or expression, the physical action which springs from the emotion. Professor William James has this to say along the same line: refuse to express a passion and it dies. Count 10 before venting your anger and its occasion seems ridiculous. Whistling to keep up courage is no mere figure of speech. On the other hand, sit all day in a moping posture, sigh and reply to everything with a dismal voice, and your melancholy lingers. There is no more valuable precepts in moral education than this, as all of us who have experienced know. If we wish to conquer undesirable emotional tendency in ourselves, we must assuredly, and in the first instance cold-bloodedly, go through the outward movements of those contrary dispositions which we wish to cultivate. Smooth the brow, brighten the eye, contract the dorsal rather than the ventral aspect of the frame, and speak in a major key. Pass the genial compliment, and your heart must indeed be frigid if it does not gradually thaw. Aren't those words fine? Read them over several times so as to be sure to grasp their full meaning. If you wish to cultivate a quality in which you are deficient, you must think about it, dream about it, concentrate upon it, live it out in your thoughts as a daydream or mental picture. Hold the visualized mental image of it always with you, and last and equally as important, if not more so, act out the physical manifestations of it. Play the part out. Act your part earnestly, ardently, constantly, eagerly, steadily. On the other hand, if you wish to repress a quality, the best way to do it is to cultivate the opposite quality, and the undesirable quality will be crowded out. If you wish to get rid of darkness in a room, you don't have to shovel it out. Just open the windows and let a little sunshine in. Professor James has told you the same thing in the quotation given a few moments ago. It is psychological law. Kill out the negative by cultivating the positive. That's the rule. But don't forget to act out the part. What is called autosuggestion or self-suggestion is one of the most active agencies employed in mind building. Autosuggestion covers all the various forms of affirmations, denials, statements, etc., employed by the several New Thought schools, and is the underlying principles of all forms of self-impression. Self-impressions would be a better name than any of these terms, for it described the process exactly. One impresses his mind with certain ideas, suggestions, feelings, and mental states. There is a dual aspect of the mind which enables one to play two parts at the same time, viz. 1. The part of a teacher or master, and 2. The part of a scholar or pupil. One may charge his mind with the task of waking him up at a certain time in the morning, and wakes up. Or he may charge his mind to remember a certain thing, and he remembers it. This form of self-mastery may be carried to great lengths, and one may bid his mind collect data regarding certain subjects from amidst its heterogeneous collections of mental odds and ends of knowledge, and then bid it combine the information into a systematic form. And the mind will so act, and the combined information will be at hand when needed. I find myself doing this almost unconsciously when I start to write a book. Fact after fact and illustrations appearing at their proper time and place. The field of self-impression has just had its outer edges explored. There is a great region of mentation here awaiting some of you. And so, this auto-suggestion is a case of say I to myself, says I. And the queer thing is that if you will impress your mind sufficiently, strongly, and with sufficient repetition, you will find it taking the impression and acting upon it. Repetition is a great thing in autosuggestion. You remember the case of a man who told a certain he so often that he got to actually believe it himself. Repeated autosuggestions work along the same psychological lines. Hearing a theme impressed upon it sufficiently often, he takes it as a fact and proceeds to act it out accordingly. Constant affirmations and statement made to one's self will manifest in actual conditions. Many a person has changed his whole physical and mental conditions by a careful, persistent course of autosuggestion. Of course, if one combines the mental image or visualization process with the autosuggestions, he will obtain a doubly efficacious result. And if, in addition to these two, he will practice acting out the part along the physical lines, he will reap a tenfold harvest of result. These three forms combined, employed and persisted in, will work miracles in anyone. For instance, if one suffers from fear in meeting other persons, an abnormal timidity or bashfulness, commonly called self-consciousness, the first thing for him to do is to brace himself with constant affirmation or autosuggestions of fearlessness. Then he should visualize himself as absolutely fearless. Then he should endeavor to reproduce the physical appearance and outward demeanor and acting out of the part of the fearless man. And thus will he gradually develop into what which he desires. His ideal becomes real. His dream a fact. His feelings action. His actions feelings. And this rule and example will hold good along the whole line of personal qualities or characteristics. All come under the rule. The same principle works in all cases. Get the principle and you have the secret of the whole thing. But here I am going to suggest a little variation along the lines of autosuggestion, which I have found to act admirably in this class of cases. The ordinary autosuggestion or affirmation works along these lines. That is, one affirms or suggests to himself something like this: I am fearless, I fear nothing, I am courageous, I'm filled with confidence, etc., etc., Now, this is fine. No one who knows anything about the subject will dispute the fact that a man holding the thought that I am fearless will be filled with courage and will manifest the qualities that he is claiming for himself. It is the old, tried and oft-repeated plan of affirmation or autosuggestion that has worked wonders for so many people. And I positively advise you to follow this plan of holding the thought and making the affirmations or autosuggestions in the first person when you are going into action as a bracer. It is unexcelled. But there is something else not so old, and here it is. You will see in the previous chapter entitled Healing Methods, in that part devoted to self-healing, I tell you to imagine yourself as John Smith, or whatever your name may be, that is, as a separate person, and then to treat him as such, just as you would a patient. This plan also works admirably in cases of character building by autosuggestion, while the I am, etc. plan is good as a bracer, and when going into action, still this last mentioned plan of mine operates far better when it comes down to steady treatment of oneself for mental failings, weaknesses and character building. Just try both plans yourself and see if I am not right. But practice my plan a little until you acquire the knack before finally deciding the matter. Here is how it works in practice. Suppose you wish to cultivate fearlessness in place of the fear thought that has bothered you so much. Well, in addition to the mental image of visualization and never to be forgotten acting out the part, you wish to try autosuggestion. The old way, you remember, was to claim to yourself, I am fearless, etc. Now, my new way of treating yourself is to imagine that you are treating some other person for the same trouble. Sit down and give a regular treatment. Imagine yourself as sitting before your personality, the central mind giving a treatment to the John Smith part of you. The John Smith, here John Smith, you must brace up and do better. You are fearless, 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 I tell you. You are fearless. You are courageous and brave and bold. You are confident and self-reliant. You fear nothing. You are filled with strong, positive mind power. And you are going to manifest it. You are going to grow more and more positive every day. You are positive this minute. Do you hear? Positive this very minute. You are positive. You are fearless, confident, and self-reliant right now. You will grow more and more so every day. Remember now, you are positive, 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 fearless, fearless, fearless. You will find that by this plan, you will be able to fairly pour in the positive suggestions to the John Smith part of you, and the latter will take them with the same effect as if there were two persons instead of one. And there are two persons according to the occult teachings, the individual and the personality. The plan will afford a welcome variation to the monotonous I am this and I am that, which have caused so many once ardent followers of the new thought to throw up the whole matter in disgust. This wholesale I am this and that business has tired many a good soul who thereby let go just when in sight of attainment. To such and to all others, I would say, try this new plan. Learn to actually treat yourself by this method, and you will be surprised at the rapid progress you will make as compared with the old plan. But don't forget to impress upon the John Smith part of you that he must hold the mental image of visualization, and that he must start in to act out the part. Don't let him get away from this. Insist upon it. Cross-examine him about it before each treatment, and hammer it into him hard. For as our brothers would say, he sure needs them all to carry him through. Now, please experiment with this method on yourself and find out its wonderful possibilities by your own experience. Don't rest with my say-so, but prove it to yourself. When once you have found out just what this method will do for you, you will wonder that you had never thought of it before. You will cultivate a sense of individuality which will recognize the personality in a plastic something that can be molded and shaped at your will by this treatment. And best of all, you will learn to know that the individual is you. You are the individual, and that the personality is merely something that belongs to you. When you have reached this stage, you will have called to your hand the forces of the great mind power, and will indeed have a right to call yourself positive and an active center of power in the great ocean of mind power. And all this will have been brought about by this new plan of say I to myself, say I. Is it not worthwhile? Then start in to make yourself over as you will. This brings the end of this chapter 28. I would suggest listening to the whole chapter, both chapters 27 and 28 again, to understand exactly what has been said here, because I think it is very important for your growth as a person.